Have I got a story for you?
Have you got a story for me?
Yep, I've got a story.
So tell me the story. I can't wait for you to begin it.
Have I got a story for you?
If you don't start, you'll never get through.
It's a whale of a tale.
It's a tale of a whale?
No. But wait till you hear what is in it.
What is the story about?
Oh, I'd say it's about 1 minute.
Shari, you lose. You can't tell a story in a minute.
Why not?
Usually when you start a story, it's 7 o'clock. And when you finish, it's the middle of January.
That's not true.
And those are the quickies.
Okay. Then I won't tell you a story.
No. I want you to. Please tell me a story.
Why do you want to hear a story?
Because it's so sad. I don't have anything else to do.
Oh.
Yeah, poor me. No friends, no sisters, no brothers. Just you and me, kid.
Oh, well. Then I'm going to tell you a story all about sisters and brothers. The Gingerbread House. A gingerbread house once stood in the deepest part of a wood. Now this house had been built with pride by the witch who lived inside. One day a girl and boy found it to their joy, and though they were very small, they decided to eat it all. Well, they started on the door when the witch became quite sore. She flew into one of her rages. She caught them and put them in cages. Now, the witch's cages were made of metal. The kids' names were Hansel and Gretel. Though Hansel was thin and Gretel was thinner, the witch decided, I'll eat them for dinner! Hansel said, Witch, I'll taste the worst. My sister's fatter. Eat her first. The witch agreed and got her key, opened the cage, and set Hansel free. Hansel rushed out and ran like mad back to his house and got his dad, who jumped on his horse and rescued his daughter. And as for the witch, well, of course, they caught her. Ticky, ticky, Timbo. A long time ago in China, if you really loved your child, the way to show it was to give your child a long name. Now, one little boy, Ticky, ticky, Timbo, no sin, nimbo, hoy, boy, bosky, poi, pando, hickey, pan, pan, nicky, no me, adam, poi, had a brother whose name was Choi.
Obviously, Choi was not the favorite.
No, lamb chop, but the brothers were friends. One day, picking apples on a tree whose branches reached over a well, Ticky, ticky, Timbo, no sin, nimbo, hoy, boy, bosky, poi, pando, hickey, pan, pan, nicky, no me, adam, poi, fell to the bottom of the well. Choi ran home and gasped, Mama, your other son, Ticky, ticky, Timbo, no sin, nimbo, hoy, boy, bosky, poi, pando, hickey, pan, pan, nicky, no me, adam, poi, has fallen to the bottom of the well. Well, that took so long to say that by the time they got the ladder and reached Ticky, ticky, you know who I mean, he almost drowned.
And that's why today very few of us have names as long as that.
The 12 Dancing Princesses. A king had 12 daughters who slept together in one room which was locked when they went to bed. Yet each morning the princess's shoes had been danced to pieces. The king offered half his kingdom to anybody who could discover how his daughters got out and where they went dancing. A soldier wanted to try. He had a magic cape that made him invisible. So that night he put on the cape and, unseen because he was invisible, he entered the room with the girls. He saw the oldest princess jump up and down on her bed. The bed sank into the ground, revealing a staircase. Still unseen, he followed the princesses down the stairs to a castle. There he saw them dance with 12 princes and drink from golden glasses. He slipped one of the golden glasses under his cape. In the morning gave it to the king, told him where his daughters danced. The king gave the soldier half his kingdom, which the soldier ruled happily ever after. The 7 Maya sisters.
All played by Lamb Chop.
Ooh. Waruna, looking for a wife, came to a camp belonging to 7 girls.
We are the Maya sisters,
they told him. Waruna hid in the bushes till he saw his chance. Then he grabbed 2 of the girls and ran away with them to be his wives. When Waruna stopped for lunch, he ordered, strip some bark from those pine trees so I can build a fire.
We won't come back,
said the sisters. You run away, I'll catch you, threatened Varuna. So each sister swung her stone axe into a pine tree. The axes stuck fast, and the two trees began to grow. They quickly rose higher and higher, with the sisters clinging to their axes until the trees had reached heaven. Then the other 5 sisters appeared in the sky and helped the 2 in the trees to climb up amongst the clouds. Those 7 sisters turned into stars in the night sky, which are called the Maya Mai by the Australian Aborigines.
And what happened to Varuna?
He's still looking for a wife. The Fussy Brothers. There were 3 fussy brothers. To judge who was the fussiest, they went to the king, who said, "I'll judge who's fussiest, but first let's eat." Everybody enjoyed the meal except the oldest brother, who gasped, "This rice smells of death." The king sent for the cook and discovered that the rice had been gathered from a field next to a cemetery. "That's fussy," said the king. A dancing girl performed, but the middle brother complained, "She smells like a goat." "Well," admitted the girl, "when I was a baby, my mother did feed me goat's milk." The king was awed. "This brother is fussy." At bedtime, the Fussy brothers were each given a bed covered with 7 mattresses, but the youngest brother held his back in agony, whimpering, "Oh, there's an object in my bed." And sure enough, they found a hair under all 7 of his mattresses. The king was impressed. He invited the boys to live at his palace and teach him how to be truly fussy. The Fairy.
Played by Lamb Chop.
Oh, good. A widow had 2 daughters, one mean, one nice. She loved the mean girl, made the sweet one do all the work, including getting water from the well. One day, a fairy, dressed in rags, begged for a drink. The pleasant girl gave it to her. The fairy said,
"You're so nice. When you talk, jewels will fall from your lips."
When she got home, the girl said, "Hello," and pearls fell from her mouth. The mother, on hearing what happened, sent her mean daughter to the well, too, thinking she'd also get jewels as she spoke. When the ragged woman begged for a drink, the nasty girl snapped, "Here's your drink, hurry up." The woman said,
"You're nasty. When you speak, snakes shall fall from your mouth."
The mean girl ran home, and her mother said, "How did it go?" The girl cried, "What was the point of sending me?" And as the mean girl spoke, snakes fell from her lips. And then the fairy appeared, now in shimmering clothes, and said,
"The point is this. In this life you get what you give."
The Fools Who Married Fools. Brenda complained to her sister Ingrid that her husband Ulrich was a fool. Ingrid insisted her husband Wendell was even more of a fool than Ulrich. The sisters decided to see which husband was the most foolish. When Ulrich came home, he found Brenda sewing. He couldn't see any cloth. She said, "The cloth is too fine for you to see, but I'm making a suit of clothes for you that will make your friends envious." Ulrich couldn't wait to try on his new suit. When Ingrid's husband Wendell came home, she scolded him. "Have you forgotten you died this morning? I've already bought your coffin." Next day, Wendell was carried to the cemetery in his coffin. Ulrich followed in his new suit. Of course, there was no new suit, so everybody laughed to see Ulrich naked. The laughter caused Wendell to open his coffin to look. "Oh, my," he said, "if I weren't dead, I'd have to laugh, too." The sisters agreed their husbands were equally foolish, but then so were they for marrying them. Rama and his half-brother. King Dasaratha loved his first wife best, for she was mother of Prince Rama. When she died, the king's second wife had a son named Bharata. "Someday my son shall be king," said the new queen. "No, Rama's the oldest," said Dasaratha. "He will inherit the throne." But the king didn't trust the new queen and ordered Prince Rama hide in the woods. "In 12 years I'll be dead. Then come back and be king." But the king died after only 9 years. The queen tried to make her son Bharata put on the crown, but he said, only my older half-brother Rama can be king." He found Rama in the woods. "Time for you to become king, brother," Bharata said. But Rama protested, "I'm supposed to return after 12 years, not 9. Take my slippers back with you. Let them rule in my place." So for 3 years, Rama's slippers ran the country, hopping up and down on the throne when they were displeased with anything. And then Rama took over. The 3 Billy Goats Gruff. 3 billy goats named Gruff wanted to eat in a meadow across the river, but the bridge was guarded by a mean troll. The smallest goat crossed first. The troll yelled, "Who dares cross my bridge? It must be my supper!" Frightened, the little goat told the troll,
"I'm only little. A fatter goat is coming."
The troll thought, as much as trolls can think, and then said, "Go on, I'll eat you on your way home." The middle-sized goat started to cross, and the same meanie said, "Who dares cross my bridge? It must be my supper." The goat said, "Hey, the goat behind me could feed you for a month." Again, the troll let the goat pass. Finally, the biggest billy goat Gruff started to cross the bridge, and he was big, huge horns and hooves. The troll called, "Who dares cross my bridge?" But before he could finish, that big goat rammed him with his horns, stomped him with his hooves, and kicked that troll into the deep river. The 7 Simeon Sons. The Tsar, who was the ruler of Russia, met 7 sons. "I build," said the youngest. "I climb," said the second. "I work wonders with an axe," promised the third. The fourth knew the secret of invisibility. The fifth was fabulous with a rifle. The sixth ran fast, but the 7th son was embarrassed. "I steal," he said. "Wonderful," said the Tsar. "I want you boys to capture the fair Princess Yelena to be my wife." So the builder brother built a tall tower. The climber climbed it and looked far over the ocean to see where Yelena lived. The axe expert chopped down trees, built a ship, and away they sailed. At the palace, the robber's son stole Yelena away. To escape, the princess turned into a swan, but the rifleman shot and wounded her, and the runner ran fast to catch her before she hit the deck. Then the 4th brother made the ship invisible, so Yelena's father didn't even see them go. They took the swan to the Tsar, and wonder of wonders, she liked him. She turned back into the fair Princess Yelena and married him. Wind and Fire. 2 Chinese sisters whose mother had died were left with a stepfather who wasn't nice. The girls longed to see their favorite aunt, their mother's sister, and begged their stepfather to let them make the trip over the mountains. Finally, he said, "You may go, but first you must bring me something I want." "Anything," they shouted. Their mean stepfather smirked and said, "One of you must bring me fire wrapped in paper. The other must bring me wind, also wrapped in paper."
"How could you hold fire with paper?"
one sister moaned.
"It's impossible to catch the wind in anything,"
groaned the second. But together, the sisters solved the puzzle. How could they give their father fire wrapped in paper? They handed him a paper lantern with a candle inside. They captured the wind in paper, too, by presenting him with a folded paper fan. He had to let them go, so the next day the sisters crossed the mountain to their aunt's house,
and from what I've heard, they never returned.
Svetlana and David. Svetlana's brother David the hunter got very sick. Svetlana went to beg the sun for help. Up in the heavens, Svetlana told the sun's mother about David's illness, and the old woman shrugged. "My son, the sun, doesn't like humans much, so I'll turn you into a broom and stand you in the corner. Then we'll see." When the son came home, his mother remarked, "Well, son, have humans been behaving?" "All but the hunter named David," answered the son. "He made so much noise with his gun, I had to cast a spell on him to keep him quiet. Don't be upset, mother. If he'll stay in a dark room for 2 weeks, he'll be as good as new." When the son went to bed, his mother changed Svetlana from a broom into herself again. The girl returned to Earth, kept David in a dark room for 2 weeks, and he got well. And to make sure the son didn't get angry again, Svetlana took away David's gun. He found a quieter line of work, and now that's how he spends his days. The 3 Enchanted Brothers. A wicked fairy turned one brother into a bird, the next brother into a deer, and the third into a dolphin. Even so, the brothers married the king's 3 daughters. The king's son, Titoni, was given a gift by each husband. The bird presented him with a special feather, the deer with a magic lock of hair, and the dolphin with an enchanted fish scale. One day, Titoni spotted a lovely maiden in a stone tower in the middle of a lake, guarded by a dragon. Determined to rescue her, he wished upon his 3 gifts, and suddenly was surrounded by his sisters' husbands. The bird flew the girl to safety, the deer kicked and killed the dragon, and the dolphin made the waters of the lake rise until the tower disappeared. Because this particular maiden was a very important royal princess, the wicked fairy's spell was broken, and the three enchanted brothers became nice young men once again.
Shari, I like the stories you tell me.
Well, one good turn deserves another. So turn now and I'll tell you another story about a sister and brother. Sister and brother. Sister and brother had one of those witchy, wicked stepmothers, so they found a cabin in the woods where they could live in peace and quiet. But the witch wouldn't leave them alone. She put a spell on brother and turned him into a little deer. Luckily, a king showed up, married sister, and took her and little deer to his palace. Now, when the witch found out, she was furious. Disguised as a nice person, she went to the palace and killed sister. But sister's ghost got into bed and waited for the king to come home. He kissed sister's ghost, which caused sister to come back to life, of course. She told the king what had been going on, and upset, the king had the witch put to death. That freed little deer from the spell. He turned back into brother again, and all was well.
Unless...
What, Lamb Chop?
Unless the witch was your favorite person in the story, and then it doesn't have a happy ending, does it?
The Lazy Brothers. In his will, a dying father left his donkey to whichever of his three sons was the laziest. At the courthouse, the judge said, "You'll have to convince me which of you is lazier than the others." The eldest said, "I'm so lazy that one day a red-hot ember flew into my lap and I would have gone up in flames if my father hadn't thrown a bucket of water on me."
"Well," said the second brother, "I'm so lazy that when I fell in the ocean, the thought of trying to save myself exhausted me, and I would have drowned if some sailors hadn't pulled me out."
The judge said, "What about you?" to the third brother, who was lying face down on the floor. The boy sighed, "Oh, Your Honor, throw me in jail. I'd rather lose the donkey than wear myself out talking." Of course, the judge gave the donkey to the last boy and ordered all three lazy brothers thrown onto the street.
I'll bet they stayed there.
Why?
Too lazy to even go home.
Snow White and Rose Red. Twin sisters Snow White and Rose Red lived in a cottage in the woods. Now, during a storm, a big black bear knocked on their door and asked if he could come in out of the cold. The bear became a regular playmate for the girls, but in spring he went away and didn't return. One day, the sisters came across a little man with a sack of gold. His beard was caught in a tree. "Help me, you idiots!" screeched the dwarf. The girls pulled and tugged and finally had to cut the dwarf loose with their scissors. "Why'd you do that?" he screeched, striking at the girls. Suddenly, the big black bear stepped out of the woods and killed the dwarf with one smack. The bearskin fell away, and there stood a wonderful prince. "That villain turned me into a bear," said the prince. "The only way I could break the spell was to kill him." So Rose Red married the prince, and Snow White married his brother, who showed up just in time to divide the dwarf's treasure, which apparently had been theirs to begin with. The Three Luck Children. Three poor brothers set out to sell what little they owned. The first tried to peddle a rooster from town to town, but people all said, "Got all the roosters we need here." Finally, on an island where there were no roosters, he announced, "Each day the cock will crow to let you know when the sun will rise. If he crows during the day, it'll mean a change in the weather." Well, for that rooster, the island people gave the boy all the gold he could carry. The second brother had a big curved knife. He found a country where people cut down their corn by shooting it with guns, which made a mess. With his knife, the boy cut the whole corn crop without smashing a kernel. Those country folk gave brother number 2 a wheelbarrow full of gold. The third boy had a cat. Now, he had trouble finding a place where nobody'd seen a cat, but luckily when he did, they were overrun with mice. The cat caught their mice, and those people gratefully filled his pockets with gold. By then, the three brothers were rich enough to build themselves a fine house and never travel anywhere for the rest of their lives. Little Brother. Bear Chief looked after all the bears in the forest from his cave in Bear Mountain. The Indian boy little brother and his two big brothers, with their bows and arrows, killed bears for food. Each time they killed a bear, its ghost complained to Bear Chief. So Bear Chief tricked the big brothers into his cave and turned them into bear boys with fur on their arms and legs. Little brother went to Bear Mountain to save his big brothers. "Bear Chief," shouted little brother, "let my brothers come out or I'll tear down your mountain." Bear Chief laughed. So little brother shot an arrow into the mountain and cracked it open. His two big brothers came out on all fours like bears, but in the daylight the fur fell off their limbs, and once again they stood on their hind legs like normal Indian boys. Bear Chief had to find another place to live.
That's probably why there are no bears in the neighborhood these days.
Probably. The Golden Lads. A fisherman caught a golden fish which said, "Cut me into 4 pieces, feed 2 pieces to your wife, and plant the other 2 in the garden." Now, nobody argues with a golden talking fish, so the fisherman did as he was told. The 2 pieces in the garden grew into golden lilies, and the wife gave birth to 2 golden baby boys. One morning when the brothers were grown, one brother, hunting in the woods, stopped to rest near a witch's hut. The witch's little dog snapped at the lad's ankles, and the boy shouted, "Get away, mutt, or I'll—" "You'll do nothing of the sort!" screamed the witch, and she turned the golden brother to stone. Back at the fisherman's place, the other brother noticed that one of the golden lilies was dead on the ground. "My brother's in trouble," he shouted, and he galloped to the witch's hut. He pointed his bow and arrow at the witch until she made the stone brother as alive and golden as ever. At home, the dead golden lilies stood up and put out a golden bloom, and the 2 lads lived long and happy lives. The Barber, the Blacksmith, and the Swordsman. Will was a barber who cut the hair of the finest gents in the king's court. His brother Brian, a blacksmith, nailed shoes on the king's horses. Andrew, the king's swordsman, was the fastest blade in England. The father had gathered the brothers to see which son should inherit the family home when a rabbit hopped by. Instantly, Will the barber gave that furry little beast a shave and a haircut. Then a horse galloped into view. Without slowing the horse down, Brian pulled off its iron shoes and hammered on a new set. A heavy rain began to fall. Andrew swung his sword in a circle over his head. That sword moved so fast, it kept the rain from touching Andrew. He stayed dry. The 3 brothers so impressed each other, they talked their father into giving the family home to all 3 of them, and they lived there together, admiring each other's skills for all of the days of their lives.
Oh, I like that.
Me too. One Eye, Two Eyes, and Three Eyes. One Eye and Three Eyes were mean to their sister Two Eyes because she only had 2 eyes and she looked ordinary. Every day they sent her to mind the goat without even giving her breakfast. Her fairy godmother said, "Just say, 'Goat, come here, table appear.'" Two Eyes did, and there was a table covered with food. She ate and went home content. But the mean sisters became suspicious because Two Eyes stopped complaining. So One Eye went to discover Two Eyes' secret. But Two Eyes put her sister's One Eye to sleep with a lullaby and then said,
Let me say it.
"Go ahead, Lamb Chop."
"Goat, come here, table appear."
And she enjoyed her lunch. Next day, Three Eyes went along. Two Eyes sang, but the lullaby only put 2 of Three Eyes' eyes to sleep. And the third eye saw everything. The mean sister killed the goat. The fairy godmother said, "Bury the goat's heart." Two Eyes did, and a tree covered with golden fruit grew in that spot. The fruit only came off the tree for her.
So Two Eyes never went hungry again.
Ricardo, Roberto, Alfredo, and Bernardo. The 4 Ramirez brothers went their separate ways, and when they met a year later, Ricardo had become a swimming champion, Roberto an expert with a gun, and Alfredo had gotten hold of a pair of glasses that enabled him to see great distances. And nothing adventuresome had happened to Bernardo. He became a woodworker. Together again, the brothers set out on a boat to rescue a princess who was the prisoner of a giant sea serpent. With his glasses, Alfredo could see that the monster was asleep. So Ricardo swam ashore and rescued the princess. But as they escaped, their splashing awakened the serpent, and it followed them. Roberto shot the serpent, but with one final lash of its tail, the creature cut the boat in 2, and they thought they'd drown. But Bernardo, the woodworker, pulled out his tools and made the boat as good as new. Well, the king chose Bernardo to marry the princess because without his ability to fix things, his daughter would have been lost. He said heroes are fine for high adventure, but woodworkers make handy husbands. The Wonderful Hammer. Kira, a poor man, was generous. His rich brother, Cho, was greedy. One day, Kira chased a flock of birds from his rice paddy, and then he lay down for a nap, and he dreamed of children playing with a magic hammer. And when he awakened, that hammer was lying beside him, and that hammer made Kira even richer than his brother Cho. Cho insisted that Kira tell him how he'd gotten the hammer, and then Cho hurried to his own rice paddy, chased away a flock of birds, and lay down for a nap. Children appeared in his dream, too, but they made fun of Cho for being greedy and pulled his nose until it hung down like an elephant's. And when he awoke, he had this ridiculous nose. Kira said, "I'll help you if you promise not to be greedy anymore." Cho promised. Kira wished upon his magic hammer that Cho's nose would shrink, and then hit Cho in the nose with it, and at that, Cho's nose became less generous, just as his heart became more so. The Forest Bride. A boy went to look for a bride in the deep forest. The only living creature he came upon was a little mouse.
A mouse? He needs a sweetheart.
"I'll be your sweetheart," said the mouse. The boy laughed, but he liked her and finally decided to take her home. The mouse hopped into a walnut shell carriage drawn by 5 other mice, and away they went. But a stranger running on the path accidentally stepped on the little carriage and crushed it, mouse and all. The boy sat down and cried. "Sweetheart?" said a soft voice. When the boy looked up, he saw that the walnut shell carriage had turned into a golden coach, the little mice into 5 big horses, and in the coach sat a lovely princess. "You liked me when I was only a mouse," she said. "Now that the spell is broken, can you still like me?" "I sure can try," he said. So the boy and the princess were married. The end. The Well of the Moon. A witch turned 3 princesses into stones and threw them in a dry well. Their father, the king, offered a reward to anybody who could find the sisters. Many tried but failed. But a sorcerer told a poor boy named Bernard, "In a bottle collect water from 7 magic wells. Next to lower yourself to the bottom of the Well of the Moon." There, Bernard found the 3 stones that had been princesses, guarded by a serpent, a lion, and a devil. Bernard threw magic water from his bottle onto the beasts, and the serpent and the lion disappeared. But the devil wrestled with the boy. Bernard bit off the devil's right ear, which, amazingly enough, is just what you had to do to destroy his evil powers. "I'll give you your ear only if you'll turn these stones back into princesses," said Bernard. And the devil agreed. And at that, everybody went away happy.
Except the devil.
What?
He put his ear on backwards, and since then, he keeps losing his glasses.
Oh. Kate and Anne. Anne's sister Kate was so beautiful, a witch was jealous and changed Kate into a sheep.
Lucky.
Well, Anne grabbed Kate and ran away. That night, Anne led Kate to a palace and asked for food. "Only if you'll sit up with the sick prince who cannot be cured," said the king who lived there. Anne agreed, and when she and her sheepish sister were alone with the prince, he tiptoed downstairs to his horse. With Anne following, he rode to a cave where fairy princesses were having a ball. The prince danced and then snuck back to his room. At the ball, Anne had picked up a magic wand dropped by one of the fairies. Now she touched her sister with it. Instantly, Kate changed from a sheep back to her beautiful self. Next, Anne touched the sick prince with the wand and made him well, too. The happy king gave Anne the prince for her husband, and the prince's brother married Kate, in spite of the fact that she still occasionally grazes on the front lawn.